Today we're building a gaming PC with the best-selling components. At the time of filming, all of these had the #1 bestseller badge, so let's see what we end up with. Hit the like button and let's start. Huge thanks to Corsair for sending their goods. Now starting with the CPU, we have a Ryzen 5 5600X, a very popular choice lately, and it is no wonder. For $160 you get 6-core 12-thread CPU with 4.6 GHz boost clock and 32GB of L3 cache. Some might say the AM4 platform is dead, which is technically true, but it still has plenty of life and I think it will be around for quite a while. In the box we have a CPU, paperwork and the AMD stock cooler. For the motherboard we have Asus ROG Strix B550F Gaming Wi-Fi 2. It is a full-size ATX motherboard and it feels a pretty good quality with the ROG style VRM heatsinks. From the main features we have PCIe 4.0 slot for the GPU, Gen 4 M.2 slot with the heatsink for storage and 4 RAM slots. We also have extra PCIe and M.2 slots which are Gen 3. On the back, motherboard has BIOS flashback button, which is nice to have. Then we have USB and Type-C ports, 2.5 gigabit LAN port, HDMI and display ports for your iGPU if you have one, Wi-Fi 6 antennas and the audio ports. I placed the motherboard on the motherboard box and installed the CPU. Our CPU has pins that you can easily damage, so it's always a good idea to install it right away. Moving on to the RAM, we have Corsair Vengeance LPX 16GB kit, which is one of the parts Corsair provided for this video. Corsair Vengeance RAM is very reliable, so it's on top of the bestsellers page all the time. This particular kit works on 3600 MHz frequency, but I'm pretty sure we can get it to work at 4000 MHz as well. Before installing RAM, always check for the correct slots in the motherboard manual or on the motherboard itself to avoid running into RAM issues on the first boot. RAM is installed, let's move to storage. For the storage, I'm using a 1TB WD Black SN770. This SSD provides a good Gen 4 experience for a reasonable price, and 1TB will be more than enough for most users. Our motherboard has 2 M.2 slots with a Gen 4 located on top, so let's install our SSD. Installing M.2 SSD is very easy, the only thing is not to forget to peel off the plastic from the thermal pad. And now we are ready for the CPU cooler. The best selling CPU cooler is the Thermalright Peerless Assassin 120 SE. It has pretty big heatsink with 6 heat pipes and it comes with 2 120mm fans. It also has a pretty good compatibility, so you get all mounting pieces with the thermal paste as well. The installation guide is pretty clear. I just removed the stock mounting and screwed the AM4 bracket. I then applied the included thermal paste and gently screwed the heatsink screws all the way. You gotta have a long screwdriver to do it easily. After that, I added both fans and used a splitter to connect them to the CPU fan header. The CPU cooler is installed and it is definitely overkill for our 65W CPU, but with this kind of cooler you can easily upgrade even to 5800X. Moving on, now we need the case. The absolute bestseller is the Corsair 4000D Airflow. It is an ATX case and it makes a pretty good impression with the quality. The case has a modern look and great value for the price as well. You get a tempered glass side panel, 2 120mm fans pre-installed and a lot of space for cable management on the back. The case is spacious, so it's compatible with pretty much any top-of-the-line hardware. The front I/O is located on top and includes a power button, USB, USB Type-C, an audio port and the reset button. In the accessories box we have a Corsair cable ties, zip ties and the screws. The mesh design on the front offers a great airflow, and what I like is that you can just pop out the front cover and get access to the magnetic dust filter. This makes the maintenance a lot easier. The case also has a dust filter on top and on the bottom for the power supply. All standoffs are in place from the box, so installing motherboard was pretty easy. For the power supply we have a Corsair RM750E. This RME series has several wattage options. The 750W is the most popular one. It has an 80+ gold certificate, 0 RPM fan mode and it's fully modular. Here's all the cables you get. For this build we're not gonna need all that wattage, but it's always good to have a room for the upgrade. Again, thank you for the Corsair for sending these parts. Now it is finally time for the graphics card, and it is an Nvidia GeForce RTX 3060. Since the price of these cards has come down, they have become very popular. I got the version from MSI, which is the bestseller, and for $300 you get a PCIe 4.0 card with 12GB of GDDR6 memory, great performance for 1080p gaming, and Nvidia features like NVENC, DLSS and ray tracing. So it's actually a pretty good card. MSI recommends 550 watts power supply for this GPU, so we are good to go. This build was pretty easy. The only thing that came out, the motherboard has no USB 3.1 header, so the Type-C port on the front not working. Other than that, Windows 11 installation followed by drivers update was smooth. RAM picked up the 4000 MHz easily. The storage benchmark looks good, so now let's move to the gaming performance. I'm using my 1080p 165Hz monitor, and in 3DMark PC scored almost 8700 points. Temperatures look good, especially the CPU, which stays under 50 degrees pretty much all the time. Now starting with the low demanding online games, in Valorant I got very smooth around 400 FPS with the ultra settings, a pretty good start. In CS2 with the max settings I see smooth around 170 FPS most of the time, raising the bar higher. In Apex Legends with the max settings I see FPS in range from 120 to 170 depending on the scene, and the frame time looks great. Moving to Fortnite with epic settings and 100% 3D resolution, I got a very playable 70 FPS with no freezes. I then tested performance mode as well, still 100% 3D resolution, and the game looks less fancy but the frame time is better, and I see around 300 FPS with some raises even to over 400 sometimes. In the relatively new game, the Finals, with the epic settings, native 1080p, I see over 70 FPS most of the time. The frame time looks good even in loaded scenes. In Call of Duty Warzone, with the recommended graphics preset, which is basically extreme preset with DLSS in quality mode, I'm getting pretty stable over 100 FPS. In PUBG with the ultra settings, I'm getting an average of 130 FPS. Sometimes I see micro freezes on the frame time graph, but overall the game is playable. So this build shows a very decent performance in online games. Let's move to single player. Starting with Elden Ring, on the max settings with no motion blur, I see a very smooth 60 FPS even in loaded scenes. Very pleasant gaming experience. In Cyberpunk, on the ultra settings, ray tracing on medium and DLSS in balanced mode, I got a very playable 64 FPS in the benchmark. The game looks pretty good and runs at playable 60 plus FPS. If you want higher FPS, you can disable ray tracing, leaving just the ultra settings with the DLSS in quality mode, and in that case game runs at around 80 FPS all the time. Moving to a new game, Pacific Drive, with high settings and DLSS in auto mode, I see FPS in range from 45 to 70 depending on the scene. I was expecting better results, but looks like the game is not very well optimized right now. In God of War, on ultra settings with DLSS in quality mode, I got very pleasant over 60 FPS. The game runs smoothly and at some location he's even close to 100 FPS. In Spider-Man Miles Morales, with the ultra settings, high ray tracing and DLSS in quality mode, I see a great quality image with around 85 FPS while swinging and under 70 in the fights. So overall this build performs really well at 1080p gaming, and it will handle any productivity task as well. It has a decent upgrade path, and even now it's a solid PC with premium quality components. Let me know in the comments if you have any of these components in your build. Hit the like button to help with the algorithm, and I'll see you in the next video.